Yeah, I find when you talk about the modesty thing, what pops into my head is I find it with guru types or people that make like exaggerated claims, and then there can be an abusive aspect to the work. I noticed I had quite a
Yes.
strong visceral reaction to people doing that. Okay, and in a sense, there's a lot there to disapprove of, quite legitimately. But I was aware of my inner reaction to it was quite strong, and in a sense, then it sort of triggers my own sense of needing to be modest, I think. And I'm looking at this group who are anything but modest, and seeing that they're getting away with all, and it. So I had to become aware of it on that level too, of what it was affecting in me.
Yes, exactly. I mean, these things pertain to every area of life, really, don't they? Not just politics, but like you say, spirituality and so on. And I think those of us who have already elected to be in this world of deeper investigation, I think it behooves us really to look at all of that, because as I said, I don't think we can separate that off. We can't split parts of life off and say, well, yeah, I'm not going to look at any of that because that's to do with the outside world and not me. We know that that's not the case. So it makes good sense to me to look at that stuff just as we would at anything going on in our lives personally.
When I've examined on this myself as to what's really in the depth of me, where my political positions emerge from, and as I alluded to before, I don't fit the totally typical bill at the kind of groups I might attend or in wider society. So I have fairly what you could call libertarian um, political views. So small or no government, a kind of anarchic thing, but a kind of like a anarcho-capitalist thing. Okay, so more of a view towards free markets, which really is quite distinct from a lot of what you meet in culture. And when I examine that, I can trace back to even being a teenager, remembering my history teacher writing a basic definition of classical liberalism on the chalkboard and saying a person has a right to do as they wish, as long as it doesn't interfere with the liberty or well-being of another person, like something like how he defined it. And I remember just sitting there thinking, yeah, that's the one for me. And when I go deep with that, I remember even having like strong feelings about the wrongness of drugs prohibition as a teenager. And so underneath that is sense in me that's always been there of life being a kind of mystery, right? Like I'm aware that I don't know what's going on, and I don't get the sense that other people have reached an enlightened position where they do. And I don't get the sense that some sort of democratic collective suddenly confers on the prime minister knowledge of what's going on. So it seemed like a real affront to me to human dignity and to this sense of how mysterious this place is, that people could dictate to others like how they should um, investigate this
Hmm.
kind of mystery, and that they could take on the responsibility for themselves. It's like it brings up this feeling of like, well, what right do you have to do that? And probably then maybe deeper still feelings of my own sense of oppression. I don't know. But that was really like core to me from the start. I remember having this kind of position right from the get-go. And that's probably married to another pole of wanting people to be taken care of, right? And not wanting people dying on the streets for the absence of some kind of freely or easily available medicine and social security. So for, I don't know if that requires deeper explanation, really, just a sense of human compassion and a sense of fairness and, a sense of oneness between humanity. And then there's those two poles I recognize have always been in me, trying to find a reconciliation with them.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting, isn't it? Because I relate to those core pieces, the piece around unfairness and not wanting people to suffer. I remember. I mean, even as we're talking, I get a memory of being at the dinner table, very young, and my mother saying, there's children. The classic thing is being told, eat your dinner because there's children starving in
Yes,
Africa.
yes.
And and being horrified that on the one hand somehow that was being made into my problem in that moment. Like, so what if I don't eat my dinner, the children are going to be starving more? Or, you know, it's sort of a level of confusion around that. And also the very natural horror that was happening somewhere, that there were children somewhere, and I really had no concept of what or where Africa was. I mean, I was at 5 or 6, but just the idea that there are children who aren't having their tea.
Yeah, the same. I grew up in the 80s where Live Aid was
oh, of
my
course,
early childhood
yeah.
memories on TV, and seeing people starving in Ethiopia. So like that, and then wondering like, well, why do we have borders? Why can't there's loads of food here? Why can't they come here? And you know, I was 6, right? So that was what.
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah. So that piece about unfairness, basically, and not wanting people to suffer, and I think what we're talking about are very basic human drives, aren't they? That are there, that I think are really part of our deepest humanity. We know on some level that we're not separate, and yet I think somewhere along the line that gets skewed, doesn't it? Both personally and collectively, we start to see us and them in all sorts of different ways, and I think we also start to split off from different parts of ourselves. One of the things I recognized in myself a few years back was how I'd split off from my own strength and sided with the underdog because I felt like an underdog. You know, always worked in areas of deprivation, for example, always felt more at home there because of my own sense of disadvantage, which was really more of a, in a sense, more of a personal disadvantage in terms of the family structure than a major economic disadvantage. Although there was a bit of that in my childhood. I mean, we certainly weren't rich. But that somehow I deemed strength as being something that I didn't want to be, didn't want to have, didn't want to be. And so that kind of skewing, I think, can happen, that splitting off of parts of ourselves that then get projected outwards, or things that we identify with or as, that we then find other people like us in some shape or form. You know, that then there's an identification as part of a group or part of a subculture in some way.
And then we find ourselves having an argument on Facebook about economic policies that are driven by things that are more to do with disowning strengths, or I wasn't aware of that.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, when we look at the extreme end of that, I think, you know, we see how toxic that then becomes. I mean, the fact that these things are driven unconsciously often, the kind of levels of vitriol and hatred and attack that happen in an unconscious way, then do become, I think, really toxic. And again, I think it's important that we all look at our behavior in that respect. You know, how are we debating? What are we saying? What are we posting?
Sure.
So that we all take some responsibility for that.